Welcome back, everybody, to episode number 7 of the Racquets United podcast. It is a pleasure, an honor. We have one of the most special guests in USPTA history that we've had on, and also just, in many words, the grandfather of sports science. And so we're thrilled to have Dr. Jack Groppel with us today.
Thank you, Brian.
I'm going to read a little bit of his bio only because it is rich with experience, history, and just filled with so much flavor, and we're so pleased to have Jack with us today. We're also going to talk about his brand new book called The Mountains Within, and we're going to get into a lot of other topics, including sports science, high performance, history with the USPTA, now RSPA, and all kinds of fun stuff.
Great stuff.
But for those of you who may be living under a rock and don't know who Dr. Jack Groppel are, he is a Kilimanjaro climber after bilateral knee replacements. Dr. Groppel is a fellow in the American College of Sports Medicine, as well as a fellow in the American College of Nutrition. Dr. Groppel is a board-certified nutritionist, a former research associate to the U.S. Olympic Training Center, a former tenured professor at the University of Illinois. If you did not notice, you might see some Illini paraphernalia and memorabilia around, and we will get to that later, but we do share an alma mater.
Yes, we do.
He's also a former vice president of the National Board of Directors of the United States Professional Tennis Association. He's a master USPTA professional, and he's dedicated 16 years of service to the USTAs as the founding chairman of the National Sports Science Committee. He's also a life member and a National Eagle Scout.
That's right.
Jack, welcome.
Thank you, Brian. It's great to be with you.
You have such a rich history in the state of Illinois, with the University of Illinois, with tennis, with sports science, with the USPTA. What we really want to share ultimately is your story and how that can affect and relate, and how our members can relate to that.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a free-flowing conversation. I want to hear about your new book. I want to hear about what you really believe is happening in the tennis and the rackets world today, because I think you've got an interesting perspective, and how we moved away from so much sports science and how we get back there, because I think that's a differentiating factor.
Be great.
We really think this could have a lot of impact for our members, so I'm excited about hearing your story. But just tell us about how the book came about. We're going to get into some of the details, but this is, and I got an advance copy, so thank you very much. I really enjoyed reading it. It took me about a day and a half to finish, and you know, it was an easy read, but I was also honored that you gave me an advance copy, so thank you. But
you're welcome.
Tell us where the book came from and what the genesis was.
Well, I've been so blessed in my career to do so many different things, and it was on Kilimanjaro. My son was 12 years old at the time, and we were on the mountain for 8 days, and it was like the third day, and it was a hard day. My son got a little sick that day, mountain sickness, and
12 years old at the time.
I was 12 years old at the time, and he got really nauseated and headachy, and I was a little concerned, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks that what I was experiencing on the mountain, all these emotions, there was exhilaration, fear, there was anxiety, euphoria. I mean, it was constantly back and forth, all these emotions, and it just hit me, this is like my life. It's exactly like my life has been. Tumultuous, chaotic, exhilarating, fun, and it was on the mountain that I decided to tell the whole story, not just the really rosy, fun things, but because my life, from the outside, this wildly successful professional life, but I had a lot of struggles personally. And I thought that the journey, I dedicated the book to anyone that ever felt they weren't good enough, or anybody that ever felt there was somebody in their life they had to please. And I think that includes a lot of people. So I'm hopeful that it'll help people when the book comes out.
So Jack, today we really want to see if we can help our professionals climb their own mountains and learn about their mountains and the mountains within. What we've did, and I know you're aware of this, but for 98 years we were the United States Professional Tennis Association, and then last year the executive committee and board voted to change the name to the Racquet Sports Professionals Association. Mm-hmm. So we rebranded. It wasn't just a name change. It really was a change not in philosophy, but a change in what the direction was, because the future of our industry is racket sports.
Right.
Over 70% of facilities now have multiple racket sports, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And that rebranding theme kind of carried through into our World Conference this year, where for the first time we really tried to make it about the members and make it about their journey, because the industry's changing. We need them to change along with it. I can see some parallels here on this rebrand you and your book Mountains Within. Mm-hmm. Help me make that connection in your mind.
Yeah, well, let's start with the rackets industry that I can identify with this whole thing because in 1979, Brian, I was a faculty member at the University of Illinois and I coordinated an international symposium. Vic Braden came in, he was the keynote speaker, and it was called the International Symposium on the Effective Teaching of Racket Sports.
There we go.
And we tied
another
in,
pioneer.
Yeah, thank you. But we tied in all different racket sports, and I did that. I ran that conference for 4 years. We had a proceedings every year. So the idea of racket sports from a business perspective and rebranding, it's been around for a while. I'm glad. I understand the business rationale, absolutely. The fact that most facilities are multiple racket sports now, that it had to go that direction. Now, then you got the traditionalists, though. They're still tennis people. So, I mean, we're dealing with all that. But there is a rebranding that has to take place. Now, as far as your own, having been in the industry my entire career, and I just talk about my own reputation that, I never really used the word brand, but I certainly was dealing with my own reputation. I mean, and I will tell you that for me, I made a very conscious decision in my late 20s as a doctoral student, that even as a master's student, that whatever I did was going to be the highest quality possible. And I was challenged by Dr. Charles Dillman, my master's thesis advisor, and he said to me 17 words that are fairly common now that people have heard me say many times, and he challenged me that if I applied myself, I could become a pioneering leader in the science of tennis performance. And I took that as almost an oath that, okay, if that's who I'm going to become, then my reputation and brand have to follow that. So I couldn't just start doing things to be doing them. I had to do quality, everything I did. So I made sure that when I did research, it was answering specific questions. I started learning how to actually ask the right questions, because I think that sometimes we get carried away. We just go. And as a researcher, I realized that it was more about the quality of what I did, and am I helping teachers and professionals? Because as you well know, and to the point of how USPTA and then becoming RSPA, my entire career was dedicated to educating professionals and coaches. So I've had the great fortune to travel to 52 countries, 7 million miles, working with federations all over the world on training tennis coaches and coaches in other sports. So I get it, this whole idea of branding. And yes, everybody has a brand and everybody has a reputation, and you owe it to yourself and your members and your students and your players to make sure that your reputation and brand are the highest quality and the cleanest and most professional possible.
So you talk about quality, and we talked about this earlier before we got got rolling here. Why was quality so important? What was that impetus in you that made you want to just feel like everything I do has got to be top notch?
Well, I was blessed to have the really good mentors. I mean, I had Chuck Dillman, Dr. Dillman, he became the first director of sports science for the U.S. Olympic Training Center. So here I am. He's my first mentor. Then I end up with Dr. Terry Ward and Dr. Robert Singer at Florida State. Well, Bob Singer became the president of the International Society of Sports Psychology. So suddenly I have all these very, very high quality human beings around me, professionals, and all they do is the best work possible. So my role models were all doing amazing work. And I was challenged not only by them, but also within my own heart. And say heart, not my mind. Because my mind would have taken the shortcut. Our brains are not our best friends, Brian. Our brains will do the quickest thing possible. My heart was that if I'm really going to live up to who Chuck Dillman said I could become, and who Bob Singer challenged me to become, that I had to do the highest quality work possible.
You're also a scientist. And there's standards that you believe and you follow as a scientist. So I imagine with those mentors, you kind of felt like that followed in place as well?
Absolutely. And in fact, a lot of people don't know this, but in the 70s and 80s and early 90s, I published a lot of peer-reviewed journal articles and a lot around tennis. So we can show these to people if we want, that the idea of you can't get in a peer-reviewed journal without doing high quality work because they're all blind reviews.
Right.
So you'll get thrown to this curb real quickly if you're not doing the best quality work possible. And I had the great fortune to do, I published peer-reviewed journal articles in tennis. I published the work I did with the White Sox on head first versus feet first sliding. I published that in a peer-reviewed journal, the American Journal of Sports Medicine. So everything I did, I wanted to make sure. And then by blessings of God, I was tenured at Illinois. I did such a lot of work and quality work that I became tenured at a Big Ten university, and in a joint appointment in kinesiology and also in bioengineering. Wow. So that was my tenured role at Illinois. But again, it comes back to you've got to do the highest quality work possible.
So, Jack, you've been around the USPTA for a long time, and now RSPA. Could you just, for those of the listeners who may not know what your background was before all the accolades, just give us a little snippet. Where'd you grow up? How did you discover tennis? How did tennis discover you? And why after? Because you were a generalist in kinesiology and bioengineering, you weren't specifically focused on tennis there until you were. So I want just a little bit of that journey, please.
Well, I grew up in Southern Illinois. All my family are farmers. My mom and dad, we lived in a small community. My dad owned 21 beagles, Brian. 21, and he ran them in field trials, which was a competitive. They didn't shoot the rabbit. What they would do is release a rabbit, and they would time how long it took the dogs to herd the rabbit back toward the hunter. And again, they didn't shoot it. It was a timing called field trials. And Dad had a dog. Dad's kennel was called Shady Dale Kennels, and he had a dog that he named after President Eisenhower. So the dog's name was Shady Dale Ike. Well, you can look this up, that Ike was a national champion.
Wow.
And Ike was one of the top beagles in the United States in the 50s. Well, in the late 50s, Dad wanted to get a different job in a larger community of Alton, Illinois, which is where we moved when I was 8, 9 years old. And Dad had to sell all the beagles. So as a young boy, I'm going, why is Dad selling our dogs? And especially Ike. Are you kidding me? Because all I'm seeing is how proud Dad is of Ike. Mm-hmm. And we drive to Niagara Falls, and I watch my father hand over the dog and receive $900 in 1959 for Ike. Wow. That's like $25,000 to $30,000 in today's money. And it was then that it was my first entrepreneurship lesson where I'm going, wow, there's a price on things like this.
There's a price, almost a price for anything.
Wow. So that was my childhood, and then we moved to Alton. All my family, as I said, are farmers, and I was a baseball player. I was totally either growing up near St. Louis. I mean, you were either a football Cardinals before they moved to Arizona, or a baseball Cardinals fan. Well, that's all we lived: football and baseball. Well, I wasn't big enough to play football, so I played baseball, and I was okay at it. I'm 11 years old, and picture this: I'm baseball, and my mom and dad said to me, we want you to take tennis lessons. And I'm going, why?
Where did this come from? Right?
Yeah, why? And they literally said the following words, which have stuck with me, and I don't really know why they said it. I don't know where it came from. But before tennis was ever given the acronym of tennis, the sport for a lifetime, my mom and dad said to me, you're not going to be able to play baseball your whole life, but you'll be able to play tennis. And to be very honest, I wasn't that sold out. I had the lessons I took, YWCA. The Young Women's Christian Association. Right. And I'm going, really? So I'm a baseball player, and you're going to make me take tennis lessons from the YWCA. So everything's working in my young brain. Everything's working against me. And I kind of liked it. But then the next year, I didn't really do a lot with it. The next year, I met a guy. His name's Bill Wicks. Bill is a dear friend to this day, and I'm godparent to his kids. But Bill was a tennis player. And he said, would you like to play tennis? Well, I'm just going, somebody to hang out with. Well, we went to the tennis courts, and we're hitting and having a lot of fun, getting a good workout. And all of a sudden, Bill says, let's go play a tournament. And I'm going, Bill, I don't even know how to score, man. And I love that. So he's driving me over to St. Louis, and we're playing, and I actually won a round. And before I lost, I said, I think I could get good at this. And Bill was willing to play with me.
There you go.
So suddenly, I fell in love with the game. Taught myself, though. Never had a lesson outside those YWCA.
The story in the book you tell of you and Bill playing in your coats, gloves, on the court with the car lights lighting the court is so visual.
And the heater.
And the heater. And you were heating the balls.
Yeah, we had 6
car
balls.
Was on. They had 3 balls in the car,
Yes.
heating the balls while they were playing with 3. and then they would switch them out.
Yeah, and when the
while
ones
they
we were hitting
got-
with got so cold they wouldn't bounce well, we'd switch the balls out.
But it is so vivid in the book that I can visually see you. You
Yeah.
almost have, one of those flappy
We were
hoods
nuts.
on with the
Yeah. We did.
Ignatius P. Riley hats on.
We were crazy, and we both fell in love with the sport. And then I told my dad. My sister had gone to the University of Illinois, and I asked her why, and she said because nobody thought I could do it. And I'm going, well, this is kind of sounding familiar. That's kind of become Groppel kid code for I don't believe you can do it. So I told my dad I'm going to play for Illinois, and he says they're not recruiting you. And I'm going, I know. He says, you're nuts. You can't walk on. It's a Big Ten school. I said, I know. And he said, well, if I've got to pay for it, you're going to have to study either agriculture or engineering. And at that point in my life, I'm going, well, it's not going to be engineering.
Right.
So we're all far. So I go into agriculture, and I walked on the team.
Wow.
And Coach Dan Olson, I'll never forget being in the basement of Huff Hall as a senior in high school, talking him into letting me try out. And it was like, I'm not so sure you can do it, but I'll let you try out. And it was like the movie line in Dumb and Dumber. So you're telling me there's a chance. That's kind of how I was. I mean, so you're telling me there's a chance. And I made the team. And it was just amazing that I got to play, and I got my undergraduate degree in wildlife biology.
There you go. Just exactly what a sports scientist would do. You also talk in the book about some injuries you had along the way. So we wouldn't necessarily say it was a standout career on the tennis team. However, after that, you had an opportunity to actually become the coach of the team.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, what happened, my master's degree, I couldn't get a job, first of all, with wildlife biology. I applied to everywhere. I couldn't get a job. And then I was offered one job, and it was at a meat packing plant, and part of my job was shoveling manure. And I'm just going, I'm not doing that. So I went back to grad school, and in population genetics. Well, in population genetics, one of your jobs is they're studying what's called tribolium beetle, which is called a flower beetle, which 3 days a week I had to change the flower in test tubes so this beetle could procreate more rapidly. So here I am at 22 years of age, creating a romantic environment for beetles to create more progeny so we could study generations. And I'm dying. I'm crying myself to sleep at 22. And I called my sister, and bless her heart to this day, she said, why don't you go talk to the people in physical education? Because you've been an athlete your whole life. And I first thought, Dad's going to kill me because he doesn't believe that's a viable field. Right. She says, who cares? You don't know. Go talk to him. And again, a blessing that Dr. Rollin Wright took my meeting, and I knew within 10 seconds I was in the right place. And he was going to admit me to the Masters of Science program, and I had to take human cadaver anatomy, kinesiology, and exercise physiology first semester.
Wow.
And he said, how does that sound to you? And I said, fine, but I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. He said, did you say you played tennis here? I said, I did. He goes, all right, then let's do this. I'm going to waive your tuition and fees, and will you teach my activity classes in tennis? I'll give you a small stipend. And I'm going, you got to be kidding me. So I left, called Dad. He cut me off. I said, no problem, Dad. I got it.
Yep.
How are they going to do that? And so on and so forth. I went on, got my master's degree, but during that, Dr. Charles Dillman said 17 words to me, and those 17 words were, if you really apply yourself, you could become a pioneering leader in the science of tennis performance.
Wow.
And then I went to Florida State for my PhD, finished my coursework, and in the spring of finishing my coursework, Chuck Dillman calls me from Illinois. Here I am at Florida State, and he says, the tennis coaching job's open. We'd like you to fly in and interview for the job. And I'm going, you got to be kidding me. Again, it's like,
right turn,
yeah,
left
you can't
turn,
make this
right
stuff
turn,
up.
Right turn, yeah.
And so I fly back, I do it, I'm interviewed, and yeah, I get a joint appointment in the Department of Physical Education, and as the men's tennis coach at 25, had no experience, yet I got the gift job of my life, and made the most of it, and I was still doing research. Then I started working with players on the tour. So I coached the men's team for 4 years, and then I started traveling, and then I went tenure track, and that's how I really got involved in the game.
So then I think is when the accolades started and the notoriety, because let's go back to your hard work, let's go back to your research, let's go back to the science. How do you think your influence over the profession started, and was it then? And what were some of those key moments where your science started to resonate with the industry?
Yeah. The industry was fairly receptive early, but because I had evidence, I had high-speed films. I was, and this is before video, so I'm taking high-speed cinematography of world-class tennis players. So in the 70s, I went up to the old amphitheater in Chicago, and I got the Virginia Slims tour. So I got Billie Jean and Chris Evert and Wendy Turnbull and Virginia Wade, Leslie Allen. I got all of them on high-speed film. So now I'm showing all these high-speed films and what really happens during stroke production at 100, 200 frames a second. And that was new. Vic Braden was doing it a little bit, but in a different way. And so Vic and I were really the two doing this whole thing in the 70s. And then in the 80s, I got invited to go to Madison Square Garden at the ATP Tour Finals, and I got Lendl, McEnroe, Borg, Connors, Solomon, Dibbs, that whole group, Smith and Lutz, on high-speed film. So now I have all this credibility, and it was in the 80s that I started working with USPTA. I went to the Colony in 1979 or 80, and that was the first world conference that I spoke at, and I showed the high-speed films, and it was received very, very well because it wasn't like I was pronouncing something. I was showing data to support what I was talking about. It wasn't that I was just pronouncing something.
But were you then sharing an idea then, this is why we should coach this way, this is why we should teach this way, based on the evidence? Or what takeaway did you want for the coaches to know then? And I think more importantly, how applicable is that still today?
Okay. So one of the things that happened in the early 80s is probably the best word picture. I was watching the US Open at home, and I saw, I won't say the name, but I saw a former world-class player say that the way you hit topspin is you make contact and you roll over the ball. And I'm dying. I'm in my front room and I'm dying in my living room.
Cringe, yep.
And I'm going, okay, what do I do? Now, the company that ran the Open also owned World Tennis Magazine that year. So I decided, okay, I'm going to take stop action photos from my high-speed film, and I'm going to send a letter. This is snail mail. This is way before electronic mail. I'm going to send photos and a letter to World Tennis Magazine, and I propose that you owe it to your readers to teach the game the right way. And this is what I was doing with coaches at USPTA, to teach the game the right way. We can't teach how we were taught. We have to understand the science behind stroke production. That's what I was doing. And then I started doing the same thing with fitness development and movement training. So I started doing all that in the late 70s and early 80s by using high-speed film and cinematography and movement. What really happens, and then how do we change our training to improve so we teach what really happens? And World Tennis accepted it. They said, so I was a technical editor for 5 years, and then Tennis Magazine grabbed me for 12 years as an instruction editor. For 17 years, I was working with the two top magazines in the world, teaching instruction and how to be better at teaching.
And did they pick you because of your scientific evidence-based background, or because you could communicate, or both?
I think it was more the science background. I think the communication came. I mean, a lot of people ask me that. How did I become an accomplished professional speaker? And I think it was all the coaching education I did.
Sure.
I was literally in front of people that were very demanding. I mean, let's face it, we as coaches, if we're going to invest energy to listen to somebody on how we can become better, we're pretty demanding. All of us are. I say that as a we, not they or you. We are
with
demanding
high expectations,
people.
high standards.
Yeah, we have high. So I made sure I met those expectations myself. Like, is this something that I would want to learn? And that was my attitude. So I worked on my professional presentation skills, but also then the delivery of the science-based evidence to show what happens. And now you asked also, is this true today? Absolutely. The foundations of what we all did, all of us in sports science, what we did in the 70s and 80s, it's still foundational work today. You have to be careful getting away from that.
You just opened up I had this later, but I'm just gonna go there now. So when I read in your book, you had such high reverence for the USPTA back in the day because of that. How to teach the right way, the courses, the symposiums, the people that you were surrounded around, the other influencers, the Harry Hopmans, the Vic Bradens, Dennis Vandermeers, Peter Burwashes, Jim Lair, and yourself were kind of these pioneers in this industry of changing the way people think, changing the way people do things. And you, as you just said, you have this evidence-based scientific approach. But what happened to that? I mean, why are we not talking about that anymore? Why did we let all that evidentiary material go to the wayside? And I think we talked maybe in 2003, 2002, somewhere like that. And now we're just trying to emulate what we see on TV many of the times.
Yeah, I want to be careful in how I answer this because it's not. I want
Nobody's
it not
listening,
to be
really.
personal. I don't want it to come across as personal because I think we have to figure out what happened. I think for whatever reason we lost our way on improving sports science. For example, people might say, well, we learned everything. I mean, we've got everything. No, we don't. We know nothing about the brain, for example. I mean, it's a new frontier, how humans learn and the cognition based and how we change behaviors. That's a frontier that's out there. What about AI? I mean, the fact that we're saying we've already got the science, no, don't ever think that, because science, really good science, what it does, it creates new questions. Mm-hmm. So the fact that we have lost our way around the sciences, there's no reason we've lost our way. We can get back there, but we just have to understand evidence-based in what we do. That's all.
I think that's what struck me the most, and we were going to do this podcast anyway, but when I read that and I read how much time and energy you devoted, and even the USTA had a vision to have a sports science committee that you were part of for 16 years, I think. And yet that's not even part of the conversation today. And the other thing that I think concerns me, and I've said this before too, is where are the next Hotmans and Bradens and Lairs and Groppels and thought influencers from a learning standpoint, from how to be the best, from a super high quality that our pros of today can look up to? Other than you and Jim, but unfortunately, a lot of the rest are no longer with us.
I know. I want to be careful how I answer this, because I truly believe what I'm going to say right now. They're out there. The people are out there.
Good.
You're only limited by your own imagination.
True.
And the thing that, it's a matter of whoever takes on the brain, for example, whoever takes that on can be the next whatever. Whoever takes on the role of AI in improving instruction and coaching could be the next fill in the blank. Mm-hmm. Take personalities out of it. You could be the next one. So it's out there. There's all kinds of things out there. Again, science asks great questions. There's still questions to be answered. So I still feel very, very positive about the future. But yes, somebody's got to take the bull by the horns and lead from a science perspective. And again, still understanding that it's an art and a science. I'm not saying that coaching is science. Coaching is a combination of art. Being a great coach is an art. It's an art form, but it's applying the scientific background.
Talk more about that. To just go a little bit deeper on science-based, but the artfulness of coaching and teaching.
I've always believed that it's kind of like laws, principles, and preferences. Like the laws of physics will never be violated. You're not gonna. I don't care how much you don't like gravity. It's gonna happen. Inertia happens. Acceleration happens. Action and reaction happen. Moment of inertia, the rotation. You can either use it to your benefit or not. But now the preferences. This is the beautiful part of coaching. You can take your style, and as long as you don't violate the laws and the principles, your style can benefit a certain student. Then we have to understand the science of skill acquisition. Is the student auditory? Is the student visual? Is the student kinesthetic? And everybody knows those things, but how good are we at trial and error? Our student is our living laboratory. They're a living laboratory of what's the best way to help this student. I still teach. I volunteer to work with my ladies 3.5 and 4.0 leagues at my community where I live. I love them to death.
Is that a laboratory or a petri dish?
Both. I'm still helping them.
Sure.
And I experiment. This isn't working for you, Susan. We got to do this.
Right.
This isn't working for you. Let's try this. I've been around a while, but it's the challenge of being a good coach. Don't just get stuck. Have fun and be creative.
It's a really good segue into, I think, again, it goes back to the genesis of the book. But in many of the things you did, you gave away for free.
I did.
You had to get known. You had to make a name for yourself. You had to build your reputation. You built your reputation on science. You also built your reputation on hard work. But you gave a lot of it away for free. Tell me why you felt that was important and why that what drove you to do that? Because obviously you're investing in something for the future. So talk more about that, please.
Well, it was fascinating. I was a professor at the University of Illinois, and I had resigned from coaching, so I'm still a professor. I'm on tenure track, and I did get tenure. So I had a nice salary from the university, and I had some endorsements. So I was making okay money. But what I was doing at the time was building my reputation. And I had revenue coming in, but for me to really get a grasp, globally especially, was to create credibility. Well, I could publish. I published a lot of peer-reviewed journal articles. I wrote for World Tennis. I started writing for World Tennis, and then with Tennis, and there was really very little payment there. I mean, maybe a little bit, maybe covered my expenses, but I wasn't making money. But I would work for physicians. I'd get research grants from doctors. The White Sox research all came from a physician funding the research. So I'm going up, I'm not getting a penny, but I'm getting to go to old Comiskey Park and shoot videos of world-class baseball every day.
I thought that was funny in the book. You said that, but he said, please don't show the players these videos.
Oh yeah. Oh, again, this is before videos.
That was hilarious.
So I was told by the managing staff to do not let the players see these videos because they were concerned about paralysis by analysis.
Right.
Now, fast forward 30 years later, they've got multi-million-dollar video budgets, and you'll always hear a player say, well, I'll decide what I'm going to do after I watch the film.
Right.
I'm going, imagine that back in my day. That
Right.
was never going to happen because of the traditionalism. So, yeah, I had to give away a lot because nobody believed that
Right.
this was going to help skill acquisition or this was going to help prevent injury or this. Dr. Glick, you mentioned the conversion of sports medicine to sports science with the USTA. Dr. Glick believed in it. He was the chair of the sports medicine committee, and Dr. Glick invited me to be a member of the sports medicine committee. And then it was in that transition that Ron Woods got involved and Paul Rodert, and we created the Sports Science Committee of the USTA. So it really became a trajectory that was built on credibility.
Right. Was there a tipping point where you stopped having to give it away for free and you started to see some income for that, or that became you were able to actually make that a full-time role?
Probably the mid-'80s is when the tipping point started to happen. I had received tenure at Illinois, and
Which is hard, and you did that very, very young.
I did it very young. I was tenured at 34.
Wow.
And yeah, I was on a fast track. I was planning on full professorship at 39. That honestly, I was so driven. It was stupid how driven I was. I mean, I'm not necessarily proud of that.
That's next on the list.
Yeah, kind of. I was pretty driven, and the idea that I could get all this done in short amount of time and get the credibility. So I mean, yeah, I was going like crazy, but then the team at Saddlebrook, which is where Harry Hopman Saddlebrook International Tennis was, they had heard me speak at a USPTA World Conference, and they heard from Tim Heckler, who was a dear friend of mine, that I was interested in relocating. We kept it under the radar because here I was tenured at a Big Ten university, so I didn't want it out there, but I was looking. And so I'm keeping the doors. I'm got a job. I've got money coming in the door, but I'm looking. My vision is much.
This eye's going.
Yeah. Definitely looking at bigger things to do. And what a blessing that the team at Saddlebrook decided to give me a shot. So, but give me a shot means I give up tenure,
Right.
Which nobody does.
Correct.
So I resigned from tenure at a Big Ten university to become the director of player development and the director of sports and health development at the Harry Hopman Saddlebrook International Tennis. So it was then, and I had trademarked the corporate athlete concept in 1983. So I owned that, and they were going to start marketing the corporate athlete at Saddlebrook so I could start working with corporations.
Okay.
And I was working with tennis players. So I had the best, I had the next dream job. So the first dream job was the tennis coaching job at Illinois.
Right.
Then I get tenure. Then I get the dream job of being director of player development at Hopman's and the director of sports and health development for Saddlebrook. So now I'm speaking to corporations and I'm training tennis players. I mean, and it's just one thing after another. And then in 1992, Jim Lair and I were able to start what became HPI.
All right, we're going to put a pin in that for a second. One of the core messages in your book is achievement addiction.
Right.
And as you just described, you were on the fast track. You
I was.
were hungry, you were in a hurry, you wanted to build that reputation, build that credibility. How did it actually show up in your career, and how did you recognize what it was, what achievement addiction was, and how that was impacting you? And what were some of the signs that showed you something needed to change?
Yeah, while I'm very proud of the things that I did do, I'm not very proud of why. I had a parental wound. I had a really deep father wound. And my dad and I were very estranged. And it was like I was going to prove to him that I was worthy. I was going to prove to him that I was good. And I mean, I was an Eagle Scout, Brian, at 13. That's stupid.
That's unheard of.
And I intentionally received my Eagle 1 week before I turned 14 for the sole purpose of showing my father that somebody could pull this off. And all I get from him was, well, not many people have done that before. You know, I didn't get well done,
Right.
congratulations. I make the team at Illinois. That's pretty good. It's like, what are you going to do now? Honestly, in my family, it was all about, what have you done this week?
Yeah. Right.
And that was the recognition. So for whatever reason, I was driven. And at the end of the day, and this comes out in the book, I was just a young man looking for love from his father. Mm-hmm. But I was so driven. And then the door opened to become a pioneer in something in the sport that I absolutely loved and treasured so much that it was like, how can I not do this? I mean, I have to do this. So then it was just full steam ahead, full steam ahead, full steam ahead. Everything was full steam ahead. And I started realizing that there's going to be no end to this, because I'm going to get this award and then I want the next one. Then, I mean, Brian, to your point, I became a Master Pro and USPTA Pro of the Year in the same year in '87.
So what's your hurry? I mean, in a lot of cases, what's the
exactly
hurry?
Right? Yeah.
But you had a moment, and you talked about it in the book, and you had a few moments, and because you're not only just in the racket sport, the tennis area, in the sports science, you then started and founded HPI, Human Performance Institute. You traveled the world, spoke in front of up to 60,000 people at a time, multi-country, 52 countries, 53 countries, like you said. But you had a moment where you realized that it was all too much, and it was all a problem.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, I'd been injured a lot in college and a little after, and I wore injuries as a badge of honor. It was like, look how tough I am. I had both knees operated on, surgery on both shoulders, and it was in 1995 in the fall. There was a hurricane. We were living in Orlando, and there was a hurricane that was supposed to hit, and I was just cleaning the eaves, getting ready for the rains and the winds, and stepped off the ladder and sort of twisted my knee. Well, by the time I got to the office an hour later, my knee had ballooned into the size of like 2 grapefruit, and I was in immense pain. And I was driven to the emergency room. They aspirated a lot of blood and fluid off my knee. It was hemorrhaging inside the knee from the arthritis. So I had to swim. I couldn't play. Tennis was done. Running was done. Swimming was all I could do for 3 months. January of 1996, I decided I'd have a speaking engagement, go to Marathon, Florida. I flew through Miami. I'm in the Miami airport going down to this real small escalator, going to American Eagle. A lot of people know exactly where I'm going.
Yep.
And there was an older woman who was on the escalator right in front of me. I could tell she was nervous. She actually turned around. She said, I hate these things. And when she stepped off, I saw that she started to fall. Well, I started to help her. And when I did, though, my heel slipped off the escalator. And by the time I got on the airplane, my knee was starting to hurt. And by the time we arrived in Marathon, Florida, I couldn't walk. I couldn't get off. They had to bring an ambulance to the plane to take me right to the ER.
Wow. They
aspirated blood and fluid off my knee. And they put me gave me crutches, and I had a speaking engagement the next day. I got a standing ovation. I have no idea what I said. I was on painkillers. I have no idea what I said that whole time, and got a standing ovation. Go back, and the orthopedic surgeon that we worked with at HPI said, "Let me just clean. I'm going to clean out the knee." So he cleans the knee out with scopes it, and now ironically, 3 or 4 days later after the operation, I've got to go to Chicago. We're recording an audio series for Nightingale Conant, the old Nightingale Conant.
They did Zig
called,
Ziglar.
Yeah, called Optimal Health, believe it or not. That's the title. That's the title. So I'm in Chicago in the studios, and the sutures broke. Paramedics come, they restitched my knee up, and I think it got unclean because a week later I got a staph infection. The orthopod came to my home, saw the knee, and said, "This is not good. We're gonna admit you to the hospital." Now I'm hospitalized for 15 days. And I want to make sure I'm really clear. People called me, but I only had one person outside my family come to visit me in 15 days. And I'm going, what the hell? Pardon my language. And I'm going, I don't want to live this way.
Right.
I'm building this reputation. People know who I am, but yet I'm not investing energy in people's lives. And this is all in the book, that this was rock bottom for me personally. And I just said, this has got to change. I don't want to be like this. Yeah, I love the fame. I love traveling. I love the recognition, but this is crazy. And I said, okay, this has got to change. And I was on it. It took me a while. It took me about 3 years to really get back on track. But I made a conscious decision that I was going to start investing energy in other people, not just in solving the problems of a sport and life.
And chasing the fame, chasing the glory.
Exactly.
So what can other coaches and what can our coaches learn from what you experienced?
Yeah.
And how do you help them avoid falling in the same trap? Or if they're in a trap like that, what do you recommend they do to potentially get out of it? And again, this is your perspective
Yeah.
based on your experience.
Yeah, first of all, always calibrate yourself and ask the question, what matters most right now? I think that's the calibrating question. Now, I will be very honest. If I had asked that to myself earlier in my career, I probably would have answered it, what I'm doing.
Right.
Because I was blind, I had blinders on. But I think always calibrate yourself. What matters most right now? Is it really getting on that airplane?
Mm-hmm.
Is it really taking another lesson and not being home that night?
Right.
Is it really doing this, or this, whatever this is?
Mm-hmm.
That just keep recalibrating yourself, because we don't have to be stuck. That's the one thing that I want people to understand from my life. My father, I'll never forget it. He said, "Son, I am who I am. I can't change." That's so wrong. You can change at any stage in your life. If it matters to you, you can change. And that's the point of my book, that at any stage in your life, you've got all these mountains inside us. We've all got mountains. And by the way, if you don't have a mountain, get ready, because it's coming.
have one.
They're coming. I mean, we've all got them. So as you scale your mountain, who are your guides and porters? Who's going to be, just like Kilimanjaro,
Yep.
who's going to be with you? You know, and that's key.
Well, we talked about, it's interesting, we did talk about that. You have to have a team around you, a team to advocate for you, a team to critic, a mentor,
Yeah.
A cheerleader. I mean, you need those people around you, like you said. And,
100%.
and so it took you 3 years
Yep.
to kind of really get to where you were happy with yourself. How did things progress from there?
Pretty good. I was on a good track. I mean, the business was doing well. I was traveling a lot still probably going too much, going too hard. But then the real coup d'etat came on 2008, because 2008 was a banner year. In some ways bad, some ways great. In January, my father passed away, so I had to deal with that, losing the man that was both the hero and the villain of my story.
And you were also his caregiver.
I was his
towards the
caregiver
end,
at that
which I know
point.
you
His mom
mentioned, too.
passed away 3 years earlier, so I was his caregiver. He passed away in January. In September, I fly to China by myself to adopt our son, and I can talk more about that story. And then in December, we sold our business to Johnson
Wow.
and Johnson.
Okay.
So in a 12-month period, lost my father, gained a son, sold my business, and the real life-changing moment was those 2 weeks in China, though, when I adopted my son.
So you go into great detail in the book about that, and it's a great story. And I think there's some humor in it too, as far as how you greeted him and
Yeah.
what he told you later that you scared me, Dad.
I know.
But what about that relationship? Comparing it to the relationship you had with your father.
Oh my gosh! I mean, that's that.
How do you see that then, and how do you see it now, and how have you managed differently, better, worse, same?
Well, I had to make a conscious decision that I was not going to raise my son the way I was raised. I had to make a conscious decision on who I was going to be as his dad. For example, in tennis, I told him when we got back here to the United States, I said, if you want to be a tennis player, if you want to play tennis, I will hire somebody to teach you to play.
Good move.
Because I'm going to be your dad. Now,
Right.
And I use that when I do parent training to this day. I want to be your dad. I don't want to be your tennis teacher or your tennis coach. And then he became a national champion in karate, by the way. Let's understand.
Wow. There
Let's
you go.
understand that the kid.
You hired the right coach.
Yeah, the kid. Yeah, that's
And-
right.
And he had some talent too.
And I think God has a sense of humor. He's going to send this man in his 50s to China by himself, this man who struggled with love and intimacy with relationships his whole life, and is going to put me in a hotel room with a 4-year-old who hates his guts, can't speak English, and he can't speak Mandarin, and going to teach you how to love somebody. And I really do believe that that was life-changing for both of us, because I was all he had and he was all I had in that 2-week time period. And I mean, and the funny parts, I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, for example, he's so full of personality. He was teasing me at the end of the 2 weeks and just having fun with me, busting my chops, and couldn't even speak English, but still busting my chops.
Right. And you knew it and you felt it.
Yeah.
How did the fatherhood, allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and also faith become really central to who you are today and how you did make that evolutionary change?
Well, with the faith part with Dad, it was hard because I was doing this very large success seminar tour for 5.5 years in the late 90s and early 2000s. And we were in St. Louis. I'll never forget it. Because remember, Dad had never come to any of my events. He never came to watch me play tennis. He came to one tennis match when Illinois was playing Principia College, like a Division III school that he knew I would win. He just couldn't stand the fact of possibly me losing. He never came to one of the baseball games earlier in my life. He only came to one tennis match. So here I am in what was then called Kiel Auditorium, Kiel Center,
Right.
20,000 in the round. and I'm following the great broadcaster Paul Harvey, and I'm preceding Mikhail Gorbachev.
Oh my goodness.
And my mom and dad are in the arena.
Wow.
And I walked on stage and I told everybody there that I'm a hometown kid. You're my hometown,
right,
and I'm excited to be with you. And Brian, I knocked that talk out of the park. I got a standing ovation. Now think about me. I'm going up. I'm going to see Dad. First time he's ever seen me in an environment like that.
Right.
He sees his kid get a standing ovation. And all I am is a good bathroom break in these things. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Paul Harvey, Mikhail Gorbachev,
right.
I got to go to the bathroom.
Right.
This guy's a good time. So I had like 30 seconds to keep everybody in their seats. So I walk out, we get a good picture of Mom and Dad and I, and then I turned to my dad and I said, "What'd you think?" Now, my expectations probably should have been way low. But he said, these were his exact words, and I did not handle it well, Brian. He goes, "You're pretty good, but Paul Harvey was by far the best speaker of the whole day."
No.
And I went,
you had a gotta shot there, Dad. You had a shot.
You gotta be blanking kidding me. And I said, "That's it. I'll never be good enough." See, and that was the beginning of the real connection to my faith, that I no longer had to please my earthly father. And that was
a moment.
That was
moment
the
is
moment
where you
when I was done.
you realized the happier you are with yourself, that's okay.
I was done pleasing him. And it was that night he said, because I confronted him, he said the words, "I love you," that night for the very first time. I was 46 or 50 years old. Never said them before.
But he also said in here, "You know how I feel."
Yeah, he said that. And I said, "No, I don't. Tell me."
Yeah.
And I confronted him and I pushed. And
did that change your relationship?
Oh, 100%. Because then he'd say, "I love you," before I would do it. For the last 10 years of his life, we at least reconciled.
Okay.
We were at least, it wasn't a great relationship, but it was a good relationship. But it also allowed me that when I got my son, that I knew who I wanted to be as a dad. That I did not want to be like my father, and I didn't have to be like my father. I could raise my son based on my own values and my own purpose and be the dad that I needed to be for him.
So let's relate it back to our professionals a little bit, just so they can kind of connect here as well. And they give so much. They give time, they give energy, they try to have families, they do their best to juggle balance between clients and their commission salespeople, so they've got to keep the revenue coming in. And yet you have all of these relationships that define success and how you perform, and this achievement addiction, I think, probably exists a lot there too. What advice would you give them? I mean, finding balance is almost a term that I think is a little trite in some regards.
Yeah, I think it is too.
But so what advice would you give them to think about if you feel like you're not going down the right path, or if you feel like you're struggling?
I would start with a very 20,000-foot perspective of, why are you in this business? Why are you doing what you do? Start with that and stay with me, everybody, because I know you might be going, "Well, you know why I'm here. It's all I got," maybe thing. I mean, but that's not why. I mean, seriously, why does this career, not job, why does this career matter to you? And really verbalize it. Really write it down. Don't just think it through. Write it down. Journal it. Because, see, that's how we change the brain. I mean, the work of James Pemberton out of the University of Texas, Austin sucks. The more we handwrite, the more we influence the brain. So write it down. Don't just say it. Write it down. Why are you in this industry? Why is this your career? This is part of your rebranding too.
That's right.
Why are you in this? What matters to you about this? Then start asking you, is this the role that I want to have? I mean, are you just banging balls all day long? I love you. I did it too. And I loved banging balls. I mean, when I was at Hopman's, I was on the court 6 hours a day. More than that sometimes, doing privates. So the idea, I get it. But is that who you want to be? Or do you want to be in leadership? Do you want to be a manager one day? So you see, depending on who you are, why you're in the field, and then who you want to be, then is there what growth needs to happen? What continuing education? What recertification? What other things do I need to do to become who? Because, by the way, my life is a testament that you can be anything you want within your talent and skill. Within your talent and skill, you can be anything you want. Now, I know that sounds motivational speakish, but here's the word picture. Shaquille O'Neal, 7'2", 300 and some odd pounds, could not be a jockey in the Kentucky Derby.
So there are some physical limitations that you might have to challenge.
Right. And likewise, a jockey in the Kentucky Derby couldn't be a center in the NBA. Now, I know those are extreme, but that's a word picture. So, but if you can speak, nobody taught me to speak. I never had a business class. I never had a tennis lesson. Brian. So, I mean, my life is a testament that you can do whatever you want. And I'm not bragging. What I'm trying to do is give you hope. If you feel that you're stuck, if you feel that you're in a career where you could do more, you can. It's a matter of following the process and doing the right things for you. And believe me, and I know this also plays true. This is also big time in the book. Because when I first saw Kilimanjaro on day 2, I about died. Because that's a long way away and that's really, really high. And yet at the same time, I'm going, but I can put the next foot in front of the other. And I said that to my son. He's Chinese. I said, the Chinese proverb, the voyage of 1,000 miles begins with the first step and then the next step. I said, buddy, nobody's going to ask us. I said this to him. Nobody's going to ask us what time we got to the summit.
Exactly right. Exactly.
Nobody's ever going to ask us that.
No,
they're going to ask if we made it. Right. And nobody cares what time. So let's just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I can do that. You can do that too, right? All 12 years old of him. He said, I can do that, Dad.
So what else did Kilimanjaro, that's a great segue into this, but what did it also teach you about resilience, preparation, perspective, but also being a parent?
Well,
because I think in the book you talk about how you had to be not only a parent but a coach and a guide and a mentor, all in that, and then you had a community around you as well. And I thought that was really important here too.
Amazingly important. And there's one story that really drives all this home. And so let me give a little context. Again, my son's 12 years old. Every night after dinner, he could have gone back to the tent and read, or he could have had a game stored on his phone. There was no Wi-Fi. But instead, he chose. Now, understand that he and I played cards all the time in his youth. So he's a good card player. So he would play cards with everybody, and nobody could beat him. So his nickname at 12 years old became the Big Dog.
I love that.
So here's the Big Dog every night after dinner playing cards with everyone in our group. Then we get to summit night. It's hell. Pardon my language. It's 0 degrees, 25 mile an hour winds whipping across the top of the mountain. Our backpack hoses, our water hydration packs froze.
Wow.
So we had to drink from the pack itself because that was where because the hoses were frozen. Mm-hmm. That's how cold it was. And my son kept saying, can we find a rock? And all that meant was, can we just lean against a rock and rest for a second? And that became our mantra that night. And you hike all night long. You leave at 10:30 at night and you arrive at 8 o'clock the next morning.
Oh,
so
wow.
all night long, you go from 15,300 feet to 19,341. So you go 4,000 vertical feet at extreme altitude. So it's just constant switchbacks. And I was hallucinating. I mean, I had all kinds of things going on in my brain. And the next morning, we're about 200, 300 yards from the cone, not to the summit yet, but from the cone of the volcano of Kilimanjaro. And we were struggling. And it was like, chuck your poles, take a step. Chuck your poles, take a step. And all of a sudden, our heads are down. I heard this noise around me, rumbling. And I look up and I see the rangers. Kilimanjaro is a national park. Right. The rangers had people that were sick. They were throwing up. And they're skiing down the scree on the mountain to get them down as fast as they can because they've got altitude sickness.
Right.
And it scared me. And I turned around to Shen, my son, and I said, buddy, are you okay? And he didn't answer me. And I said, Shen, you've got to answer me. Are you okay? And here's all 12 years old of him, head down. He shakes his head up and down like, yes, I'm okay, but he didn't say a word. He just nodded his head. Our guide who was with us heard me get firm with him and comes back and goes, Shen, do you want to go back? And when he did that, I go, we're done.
Yep.
We're done. I don't think he's going to make it. Mm-hmm. And my son, 12 years old, head down, shakes his head, no. I don't want to go back.
Wow.
But he can't move. Now, all of our fellow climbers that he'd been playing cards with all week were at the cone, and they saw him stuck, and they saw the guide and I talking to him. All of a sudden, Brian, they started screaming and cheering for my son.
Wow.
And I said, buddy, what do you want to do? And I started walking closer to him. He held his hand up. He says, Dad, I got this. And he started walking, and he made it to the summit of Kilimanjaro. But it was because of the resilience created by the camaraderie of everybody coming around him and surrounding him with love and fellowship and friendship. And my 12-year-old son made it to the summit when other 12-year-olds don't make it. They don't. And I credit him. I credit our fellow climbers. But I say, why can't we be like that in life and in business? Why can't we be like that?
Rally around each other.
And rally around each other and create that kind of resilience and growth with each other. Because I will tell you that he made it to the summit because of all of that love surrounding him. And that's my message.
How do you How do you go from there? How do you take that great moment, and how do you help him translate that into the rest of his life?
Well, 2 years later, the kid wins a national championship in karate. And I mean, I think it was a Kilimanjaro moment. Let's do 1 year later, not before the national championship. The next year, he's at nationals and he's in kata, which is forms, and he loses in the first round. Well, it's double elimination. So now he's at the end of 12. There's 12 kids, his age group. So he's at the end of 12. He wins again. He wins again. He wins 10 matches in a row and gets a silver medal.
In the back draw, basically.
And
He wins the back draw.
And I'm going, this is Kilimanjaro again. He was faced with incredible odds against him and just took one at a time, and he medaled. He got a silver medal. The next year, he's still a brown belt, Brian. He's a brown belt. His buddies are black belts, and they invite him to compete in the state tournament in team kumite, which is team fighting.
Right.
They win. And I'm going, okay, he qualifies for nationals. And I'm going, now he's a brown belt.
Right.
And I'm going, okay, now he qualified for kata, for forms again, so we're going there anyway. Mm-hmm. So we get there, and they're in the first round, and they win. Second round, they won on penalties. So they're in the third round now.
Wow.
There's only 2 or 3 more rounds. Basically, he gets to the finals the next day. And they're going to fight in the Broward County Convention Center under the lights at night, hundreds of people watching in a center court. My son, now he's 14,
right,
comes up to me and he says, this is the team fight. He says, Dad, I'm starting tonight. And I went, wait, what? And he goes, I'm starting. And I know who they're fighting. Mm-hmm. The 3 members of the other team are all U.S. national team members. And I'm going, buddy,
wow,
do you realize who you're fighting? Yeah, I'm not going to be bullied by them, Dad. I'm going to be fine. It was like Kilimanjaro again.
Oh my gosh.
When he held up his hand and he said, I got this.
Yeah.
And the fight starts. And my son knocks this kid down legally 3 times. Legally. Not just wasn't going to be bullied.
Right.
Didn't hit him, but just brusque up against him. Kid fell down. My son, by the time he's tagged out, is up 4-2.
Wow.
And they went on to win the national championship.
Holy cow.
And my son started that fight off. And I'm just telling you that there are lessons learned about competing in not just in sport, but in life and dealing with stressful times that he learned a lot. And me as his dad, to envision and be alongside him to watch that. I mean, at one point, Brian, I'm filming this final and he's beating this kid. I literally was the epitome of the father looking around the side of the camera going, who are you and what have you done with my son? And I'm going, whoa. And because it was that unconscionable that he was fighting that hard and that well. And he's a brown belt. He's not even supposed to be in this fight.
So it's such a great example of so many things, but resilience is number one, but also I'm not going to be bullied and I'm not going to take it.
Yeah.
And I could see how fighting through something like Kilimanjaro could help you lead to feeling so much more confident in everything you do.
Yeah, that's right.
But you have a lot of pros who are still stuck. You have a lot of pros who may or may not love what they do, love who they're working with, parallel with. What advice would you give them? Where do they find that big rock for them to help make that moment happen where they feel because a lot of it comes down to confidence. We talked in this rebranding idea of, for you to be ready for this next evolution of where racket sports is going to go, you need to have a professional headshot. You need to know how to write. You need to know how to talk about yourself and, sell yourself in some ways, but in a way that is not arrogant, but is descriptive. Because if people check you out, they're going to look at your LinkedIn profile first. If you don't have a professional LinkedIn profile, you're not going to go anywhere. All of that stuff and all of those items are super important, but it's all building that confidence so for you to feel like I can climb my Kilimanjaro. I can put that one foot in front of the other. What would you tell them and what advice would you give to them to help get unstuck and to help get out of this rut?
This is exactly why I wrote this book. Because in the epilogue of the book, I talk about, for my dear reader, this is now for you. And I talk about, number one, having hope and what is hope. And number two, about the role of a mentor, either having a mentor or being a mentor. But let's talk about hope first. What people don't know about that climb on Kilimanjaro, the way it started. We woke up at the hotel, and we're going to be climbing that day. My son calls his mom to maybe say goodbye. We don't know what this is going to be. We don't know.
Right.
We don't know what's ahead of us. I mean, I've got all these papers that if something happened to me, how
Do they
he
tell
would
you to
get
wait a
home.
letter?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, not about your death, but
Sure.
I had to write one in case something happened to me.
Sure.
And he was only 12 years old.
Right.
But we woke up that morning, no water in the hotel. Now, we're not going to have a shower for 8 days, but no water. Not just no hot water, no water. Then our driver got lost on the way to the mountain. We were lost for well over an hour. And we're all going, what the heck? And then we get to the mountain. We're at the trailhead, Lemosho Trail, and a bug flew in one of our fellow climbers' ear. And with a blood-curdling scream, she hit the ground.
Oh, no.
And we're all going, wait a minute. We're going to climb this
That's
mountain.
three things. So
Three
do you
things.
think- yes,
and we're just
exactly
going,
right,
you got to
right.
be kidding. And we were able to help her, but then the climb started. So this is before the climb ever started.
Before you take step
You talk
one.
about not having hope. I mean, this is not hopeful. And then you see the second day, I already said I saw the mountain and I about died because it was so far and so high. See, if we take a look at our careers and all the things you started mentioning, the LinkedIn page, your profile, your brand, it seems like too much. But you can take the next step.
Yep.
And this is the part of having hope. Have that next step. Take everything and take that next step, whatever that step looks like, one at a time. And then you go into the mentoring piece. Everybody should either have a mentor or be a mentor. To this day, I mentor a ton of people. I do it privately. I don't mind that people know that I do, but I do it a lot. I'm on the phone almost every day with younger people. And all I want to do is help them find themselves and help them just navigate storms that they're facing. That's all I want to do. And I don't charge a penny. Now, I don't want everybody calling me.
Yeah.
But I don't charge a penny for this because they're friends and they're people that I care about. But I mean, we all need mentors. We all need people in our lives. So don't think you're doing this alone.
Right.
See, if you're a member of RSPA and you're trying to do this rebranding, don't do it alone. That's my advice. Don't do it alone. Have someone, and by the way, if you're further along in your career, come along somebody. Be there, because this is what makes us part of the human race together. When we give of ourselves, that's the greatest gift you can ever give, is give of yourself to someone else.
I love that. Jack, we're going to take a pause here. We're going to take a break. We're going to call this episode 1 because I have a whole nother list of us to talk about episode 2.
Great.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Racquets United podcast. We have so much to talk to Dr. Jack Groppel about. We're going to divide this episode into 2 parts. Thank you so much, Jack, for being part of this first part of it. And next one, we're going to dig into really the art and the science of coaching. Thanks for joining the Racquets United podcast, and we'll see you again next week.